It was the size of a small city 3 football fields long, rising 11 stories above the sea. The Titanic wasn't just a ship, it was a promise, a floating monument to human confidence. And for 5 days, it looked like that promise would hold. Then a single iceberg, silent, ancient, and patient, made history bleed. People had joked about it, boasted about it. One crewman even declared that not even God himself could sink the White Star Line's grand masterpiece. The Titanic was 46,000 tons of steel and luxury, the biggest moving object most people had ever seen. It had 16 watertight compartments, the finest orchestra afloat, Turkish baths, wide verandas lined with palms, fine dining, its own world, insulated from wind, wave, and reality. On April 10, 1912, newspapers around the globe followed her departure from Southampton, England. New York was the destination. On board, 891 crew members and 1,316 passengers. Some were among the richest people on Earth. About 700 were immigrants traveling in steerage. But nearly everyone carried the same belief: this voyage would be safe, comfortable, almost boring. They were wrong. April 15th. A sea of ice and silence. When morning came on April 15th, 2 collapsible rafts and 15 lifeboats drifted on choppy Atlantic water amid fields of ice. The survivors, half frozen, weak with shock, were the only proof the Titanic had ever existed at all. Across a wide area, debris floated like scattered memories. Bodies, did 200s of them, face up, bruised, battered, many already unrecognizable. One witness said they looked like a flock of seabirds bobbing in the waves. Some were women. Some clutched their babies so tightly in death that their arms refused to release them. The world's first unsinkable ship had vanished in a matter of hours, defeated by the oldest enemy of careless sailors, an iceberg that did not announce itself. And the question that still haunts history is simple: did people die that night because the Titanic was unlucky, or because someone refused to listen? Unheeded warnings. By modern standards, the Titanic was doing exactly what you shouldn't do in ice waters. On the moonless night of April 14th, she drove forward at about 22 knots, fast enough that even a quick turn could become a death sentence. But since a.m. that morning, warning after warning had arrived from other ships along the same Newfoundland route: ice ahead. The steamer Caronia sent an alert. Captain E.J. Smith acknowledged it. Later, the Baltic warned of large quantities of field ice. Captain Smith handed that message to J. Bruce Ismay, the White Star Line's managing director. Ismay read it and slipped it into his pocket without comment. The ship Californian tried more than once. 3 large icebergs, the operator warned. Later, from only 19 miles away, he sent another message: "We are stuck here, surrounded by ice." The Titanic's radio operator, Jack Phillips, snapped back: "Keep out." "Shut up. You're jamming my signal. I'm working Cape Race." It sounds unbelievable today, but it revealed the ugly truth of luxury travel in that era. Radio wasn't treated as a safety tool first. Phillips and his fellow operator weren't even White Star crew. They worked for Marconi, and their priority was sending passenger messages, wealthy people's telegrams back and forth across the ocean. Then came one of the most chilling warnings of all. At 9:40 p.m., the Mesaba reported heavy pack ice and a great number of large icebergs directly ahead, across a wide stretch of coordinates. If Titanic's bridge officers received it, and historians still argue about that, then the danger zone wasn't vague. It was unavoidable. Meanwhile, another sign appeared in nature itself. The water temperature plunged from about 43 F to nearly freezing within hours, often a clue that ice is nearby. But the Titanic didn't slow down. It didn't turn south. It kept charging forward. Barely a jolt. Around p.m., some second-class passengers gathered for an after-dinner sing-along. Their voices rose softly into the night hymns, comfort songs, including a line sailors had prayed for centuries: "Oh, hear us when we cry to thee, for those in peril on the sea." At 11:40 p.m., Lookout Frederick Fleet saw something darker than the dark, an object that didn't belong on the horizon. It grew quickly, swallowing distance as if it were alive. He struck the bell 3 times. Then he grabbed the phone to the bridge and said the words that should have changed everything: "Iceberg right ahead." First Officer William Murdoch ordered engines reversed and shouted to the quartermaster to turn hard to starboard. The Titanic began to pivot, but at over 22 knots, displacing tens of thousands of tons of water, she couldn't move like a speedboat. She moved like a continent. Fleet exhaled in relief as the ship finally started to swing away. Too soon. Ice scraped down the starboard side. Not a dramatic explosion, just a long, lethal rip. About 300 feet of damage opened the ship's body to the ocean. In the boiler rooms, green seawater poured in like an invading army. A fireman barely escaped through a watertight door before it slammed shut behind him. Up above, many passengers felt only a mild shudder. One woman said it felt like someone ran a giant finger along the ship. Another compared the sound to cloth tearing. Some first-class travelers stepped out to view the iceberg towering above the deck and shrugged. They returned to their warm rooms unconcerned. The crew already knew better. Captain Smith met with the ship's designer, Thomas Andrews. After checking below, Andrews delivered the line no one wanted to hear. 5 compartments were flooding. The Titanic could stay afloat for an hour and a half, possibly 2. Not much longer. Too few lifeboats. Around midnight, about 25 minutes after the small collision, the order came, uncover the lifeboats. There were 16 lifeboats and 4 collapsible rafts. Even at full capacity, they could hold 1,178 people, about 1,000 fewer than the souls now moving through the corridors and onto the decks. Why? Regulations were outdated. Inspectors hadn't imagined a ship this large, so the rules were written for smaller ones. And worse, nobody truly believed the Titanic would ever need to be evacuated. Passengers hadn't even been given a lifeboat drill. The result was confusion that grew into chaos. Some boats left half empty. A boat built for 65 lowered with only 28. Another capable of carrying 40 drifted away with just 12. The band played to calm the crowd. Rockets hissed up into the night at 12:45 a.m., bright and desperate signals meant to scream, "We are dying," without words. The ship that didn't answer. 10 miles away, the Californian sat locked in ice. Crew members saw lights. They saw rockets. But their radio operator, exhausted and irritated after being snapped at, had shut down his equipment and gone to sleep. Captain Stanley Lord chose not to wake him, even as the rockets kept rising. The Titanic begged for help that the Californian could have possibly delivered in time. Instead, the ship that answered was the Carpathia, 58 nautical miles away. Her crew pushed the engines beyond safe limits, screwing down valves to race through the night. Still, it couldn't arrive before Titanic's final minutes. Don't waste time. At first, some rich passengers refused to believe it was serious. John Jacob Astor, one of the wealthiest men alive, mocked the idea of getting into a lifeboat. "We are safer here than in that little boat," a crewman snapped back. "Don't waste time." Slowly, laughter died. Jokes turned to silence. Men stood on deck as women and children climbed into the small boats and were lowered into darkness. Mrs. Isidor Strauss refused to leave her husband. "I've always stayed with him," she said. "Where you go, I go." Benjamin Guggenheim changed into evening dress, declaring he would go down like a gentleman. Ismay, who had earlier pocketed a warning, entered a lifeboat at about 1:40 a.m. and escaped. The world would tear him apart for it. Down below, steerage passengers poured upward too late, many never warned, many still trapped in the maze of lower decks. By 2:15 a.m., the ship tilted so sharply that the last collapsible rafts couldn't even be launched. The final minutes. Hundreds gathered at the stern as it rose higher and higher into the air. At 2:18 a.m., the Titanic stood almost upright, balanced on its bow for a terrible, suspended moment, like the world holding its breath. Then the sound came, a horrific roar, funnels collapsing, bulkheads imploding, everything loose, equipment, bodies, the ship's own furniture swept into water below freezing. At 2:20 a.m., the Titanic slid under, breaking in two as it plunged. The wreck would settle 13,000 feet deep, about 350 miles southeast of Newfoundland, under crushing pressure, buried in the dark for decades. She had sailed the ocean for days, 17 hours, and 30 minutes. Only 705 people survived. Captain Smith did not. Radio operator Jack Phillips did not. More than 1,500 died. The grave is found, nearly 3/4 of a century later, in the early hours of September 1, 1985, a submersible named Argo began photographing debris on the ocean floor. Led by marine geologist Robert Ballard, an American expedition found one of Titanic's boilers at 2.36 miles deep than the ship itself, broken into two halves lying 1,970 feet apart. Ballard said it felt like opening a pharaoh's tomb. Later dives revealed haunting pieces of the ship's luxury chandeliers, porcelain, wine bottles, rows of dinnerware preserved like ghosts of a world that thought it was untouchable. A memorial plaque was placed on the stern, and Ballard fought to have the site treated as a protected memorial, not a treasure chest. Were the lessons learned, or just forgotten? After Titanic, the world promised, never again. In 1914, new safety rules were adopted: enough lifeboats for everyone, radio operators on duty at all hours, better bulkheads. New technology like the echo sounder helped locate hazards. But history has a habit of testing whether humans truly remember. On June 20, 1989, the Soviet cruise ship Maxim Gorky was ripped open after midnight by drift ice in the Greenland Sea north of Norway. A party was happening on board. Most passengers slept just like in 1912. 2 gashes were torn into the hull, and about 18,000 tons of water rushed in. Passengers were ordered onto deck with life jackets. There was confusion, but this time no mass panic, and rescue came quickly. In the end, remarkably, no passengers or crew were injured. One Norwegian rescuer later remarked he would never have sailed faster than 2 or 3 knots in ice, but the Maxim Gorky had been moving around 18 knots fast enough to make people ask the same old question: did we truly learn from Titanic? Or did we simply get lucky this time?